All right, so I feel like it's not only just legal now, but it's generally accepted, the idea of fraud, and especially when it comes to food. And I'm not a lawyer or know any of the legalities of how much fraud is legal, but uh, one of the definitions I read was a deception to create value. And as far as food goes, I feel like it probably goes back to milk, where any white substance can be labeled milk, even though it has nothing to do with milk. And that word milk creates value on those cartons, and that's a deception to create value. It's a definition of fraud. And then you move into this plant-based garbage where they call it plant-based meat, even though nothing in that package has anything to do with meat. It's an imitation meat, and that's what it should be labeled. By labeling it plant-based meat and using that word meat on there, that's a deception, and it creates a lot of value for those companies. And that's the definition of fraud. And now we're moving into this lab meat stuff, and they're building a new lab meat factory in North Carolina. And if you're not familiar, there's the idea that meat should be grown in factories and laboratories instead of out here on animals. And Bill Gates is an investor, and Richard Branson, a bunch of nerds. But also JBS, Tyson Foods, and Cargill, the three biggest beef packers in the world, are also invested in this lab meat. And the process is that I've read about is they take a pregnant cow and they kill her and they cut her fetus out and they suck blood out of the fetus, and then they get this what they call fetal bovine serum, and they get cells out of that fetal bovine serum, and they're able to grow meat from those cells, or at least they say they can. But it's not meat, it's some other laboratory concoction. Those cells have to sit in a vat of bioreactor, is what they call it, of antibiotics and chemicals, and they have to feed it and keep it perfectly temperature regulated, and all that's supposed to be better for the environment. But what the problem I have right now is the beef packers have brought along their lobbyist group, one of them, called the North American Meat Institute, and they're currently lobbying USDA and FDA for labeling regulations. And what that means is they're trying to work their way into where it can be called meat, be labeled as close as they can to meat or beef, and to fraud the U.S. consumer. And the real problem with that is the North American Meat Institute is a checkoff contractor. And if you're not familiar with the beef checkoff, it was created for promotion and research of beef. And cattlemen have to pay into it. Every time cattle are sold, $1 per head of cattle goes into the beef checkoff. And the North American Meat Institute gets money. They've been lobbying since 2018 for a lab meat company that Tyson and Cargill are invested in. And since 2018, the beef checkoff has paid the North American Meat Institute over $2 million. And so that's cattlemen's money going directly to funding a lobbyist organization that's lobbying on behalf of the fraudulent food industry. And what cattle people need to understand is that the beef industry is all in on fraud. All four beef packers, the beef industry is controlled by mainly four beef packers. They control 85% of all the beef sold in the U.S., and that's JBS, Tyson Foods, Cargill, and National, which is owned by Marfrig. And all four of those corporations have invested in plant-based fake meat, and three of them, JBS, Tyson, Cargill, have invested in these lab meat companies. But the worst fraud of it all, probably, is one that's put on real beef, and that is that foreign beef can be imported into the U.S. and labeled product of the USA. So the men and women of this country work incredibly hard to create and raise the best beef in the world. And so the most valuable thing you can put on a beef package to create value are those three letters, USA. And when the beef packers use those letters, they put that product of the USA on foreign imported meat. They're not only defrauding the consumer, but they're stealing the value that the men and women who raise these cattle in this country work their ass off to create. So a lot of people watch these videos and they wonder how cattlemen can be so powerless and lose so much, have no control over their own industry, and how these things can keep happening. And the answer is goes back to the beef checkoff, and the organization that runs it is called the NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, and they are supposed to be a cattlemen's organization, but they also lobby for the beef packers. And so when you have thousands of cattlemen spread out across the whole country that are, trying to possibly be profitable, and you also have 4 corporations that are making hundreds of millions of dollars, you can tell who gets the preferential treatment there. And as far as the checkoff, NCBA controls all the beef checkoff money. And this year they've awarded themselves $41,420,000, and they ultimately profit or benefit. They are the ultimate benefactor from beef checkoff money. And what a lot of cattle people need to realize is that cattle producers are not the only ones paying into the checkoff. Importers are also paying in. And so it actually benefits the NCBA, the beef checkoff, and ultimately the NCBA to import more beef. And Giles Stockton at a Montana Cattlemen's did the math for 2020. And from Brazil alone, the imports from Brazil alone added up to $5.6 million. Importers are charged on the pounds of beef they import, not on the heads of cattle. And so the more pounds of beef that get imported, the more money that goes into the checkoff, and the more money that ultimately ends up with the NCBA. And just from Brazil in 2020, $5.6 million went in the checkoff. If you add in Canada and Mexico, you get up to $7.7 million. And there's a lot of other countries that import beef. And so you're at $7.7 million from 3 countries. And that's a big chunk as far as the checkoff. And that was in 2020, and we've imported a lot. The amount of beef we import now has increased a lot over the last 2 years. And so what cattle people really need to realize is that the more, this product of the USA deal, it gives value to foreign imported meat. And more meat that gets imported, the more money that goes to the beef checkoff and goes ultimately to the NCBA. And so if you're wondering why nothing is ever getting done on this product, the USA, it's the so obvious, blatant fraud to the U.S. consumer. It's because the NCBA is gaining financially from increased imports of beef. When this checkoff started, all the money is supposed to be used for promotion and research. And now almost all the money goes to lobbyist organizations, NCBA being the main, getting the majority of the money. But to me, of my years in business, the best promotion that you can ever do for yourself is to create the highest quality product you can and be as open and honest and transparent about that product as you can be. And if you do that, you will get the most valuable thing there is in marketing, advertising, or promotion, which is a loyal customer, and a loyal customer that will promote you through word of mouth. There's nothing more valuable than that in the promotion, marketing, advertising world. And right now, cattle people can't really get that, because we can't even push for that, because our checkoff money and our promotion money is all tied in with this checkoff and this cattlemen's organization that is dead set on promoting what the beef packers want, and what they want is fraud. And so cattlemen have been working really hard to get rid of this checkoff or to change it and reform it for years. But because of the way it's written, because of the way the law is written, and because the NCBA's cozy relationship with the USDA. The USDA ultimately controls the beef checkoff. But this year, I feel like there's a new farm bill coming up, and hopefully something can be done. There's two things that I want people to remember from this video, and that is America's Beef Labeling Act needs to pass one way or another, whether it's through the farm bill or whatever, or just acted through Congress, and that will get rid of the Product of USA fraud, and it will give a country of origin label to every package of beef. And the other thing is beef checkoff reform. Cattle producers need to get a hold of it, get their checkoff back. And it's really complicated how that law is written, and how hard it has been for people who have really tried and who really understand the system to get it back. But I'm hoping, with this farm bill or with some other way, that something can be changed and that checkoff can be reformed and actually used to promote U.S. cattle. And so I hope to be doing a lot more stuff about the checkoff and kind of explaining where all the money's going and how corrupt and really crooked the system is. Because everybody that I know that has ever looked into that system has come out, kind of with their jaw on the floor about what an absolute mess it is and how corrupt it is. The best explanation, I think it was Von Meyer, who actually served on the checkoff beef board, and he called it a money laundering shell game. And so I think that's pretty much the best definition anyone's had of the beef checkoff. And so I'm going to be doing more videos, not all on the checkoff, hopefully a lot of different stuff. I already started one on why, kind of what it means to agriculture now that professional athletes and investment firms are investing in farmland. And so hopefully I'll have that one out next. And subscribe, please share this video, get as many people you can to watch it. And we'll see you soon. Adios.